Alrighty, so it looks like we're live, so welcome. This is going to be a little bit of fun. It's always fun to do a live stream. There's a challenge with live streams, I've got to say. But in this live stream, what we're going to do is we're going to ask the question, whereabouts are you on your Greek journey? And if you are just getting started with me today, I'd love for you to just let me know. Drop a comment in the comment section below. Let me know where you think you are right now. And really your choices are you're a beginner, you're intermediate, or you're super advanced, right? And what we're going to do in this live stream is we're going to talk about what is the difference between those and how are you going to evaluate whereabouts in that journey you are. So leave a comment in the comment section below, or even in the live chat if you're here live, and let me know where you're at in your live stream. And of course, if you get value out of this, please hit the like button. That helps other people find this as well. So where are you up to in your journey? And before I get started, I just do want to mention just a couple of little things. First of all, we just hit 8,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel overnight. So I want to just say thank you to all of you for your support and your encouragement and your help to build out Master New Testament Greek and this YouTube channel as well. And we've got lots more to come, so we're not stopping anytime soon. So thank you so much for your support. Now, like I mentioned, there are really there's three key areas that we're going to focus on in our live stream today. Of course, we're going to talk about the beginning stage a little, but really our focus is not on the beginning stage today. And the reason for that is that, well, last week I did a video talking about the beginning stage and the 4 key tasks you need to be able to master essentially anything that you might happen to encounter in any beginning Greek grammar. Now, if you're interested in that, in the description of this live stream or this video, you'll find that there is a link to that video. So you can go back and watch that later on whenever you want to. So that's the beginning stage. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time there. It's just for what it's worth. If you are a beginner, if you've never learned Greek before, again, I've also put in the description for the live stream a video talking about how long it takes. And let me just summarize that quickly. If you're a beginner, you should expect it to take about 6 months. In fact, now in my roadmap, you can download my roadmap to mastery. Let me just stick that on the screen for you because that might be helpful. In my roadmap now, you can actually download that, and that will actually explain how to go from knowing no Greek all the way to reading the New Testament, or at least starting to read the New Testament within 6 months, right? So expect it to take around 6 months to be able to go from knowing no knowledge, no Greek, through to be able to read the 1 John in Greek. Now, everybody's different. Not everybody has exactly the same experience. I have a small number of members inside Master New Testament Greek who are, I see some people are saying about some sound issues. I'm not sure what I can do about that, but let's just hope it helps. Anyway, so yeah, some people take a little bit longer inside Master New Testament Greek to go through, but most people finish beginning Greek in about 6 months, and they take about it takes about an hour a day. Again, some people are different. People take it depends how much time you've got to put into it, really, and it depends to some extent. It depends how old you are as well. I find that some older members do tend to require a little bit more time. It depends on the grammar you use as well, but typically I say if you're at the beginning stage, expect it to take about an hour a day for about 6 months, and then after that it gets a lot easier and you should be able to start actually reading the text and really enjoying it. So if that's you, then great. Just get back on the bandwagon. If you've fallen off, make sure you finish your beginning Greek. It's well worth that hard work. I mean, it's only 6 months. The key thing is just stick with it. It's really, and this is true of the whole Greek experience, really, is that you've got to be consistent. And I know life gets in the way and it gets hard and there's not much you can do about that. But at the same time, if you can carve out 6 months where you can just spend an hour a day working on it, you can get there. And the other thing too is that there's plenty of opportunity to grow beyond that, and and it does take some time, but we'll get there. So let's talk about that. So first of all, so that's beginning Greek, about 6 months, an hour a day, and that's kind of what to expect, okay? But there's a video in the description you can watch to get more details on that. Now let's talk about intermediate. Now, if you're in the intermediate stage, let me just explain what I mean first of all by intermediate. Who are you if you're an intermediate student? And let me just get the, there we go. I'll take the overlay off because we probably don't need that right now. So there we go. What is it? How do you know if you're in the intermediate stage or not? Now, let me just say before I explain this, there are a number of stages in the intermediate stage. And if this is you, if you think you're in the intermediate stage, leave a comment in the description or below or in the live stream chat. That'll be awesome. To note, someone who's intermediate is somebody who already knows the words that occur regularly, like 50 times or more in the Greek New Testament. You've finished a beginning Greek grammar. You can pass words pretty reliably. And by reliably, what I mean is, it's not necessarily 100%, but certainly between 80 and 90%, I think is a good sort of finger in the air amount. If you know the words that occur 50 times or more, you're up to date on those, and you can pass reliably at about an 80 to 90% success rate, then you're good. At this stage, you should be able to use a reader's edition to read through the Greek New Testament. Now, it doesn't mean to say your reading is going to be super fast, but at the same time, you should find that you're able to at least work through the basic text, like 1 John and places like that, without too much of a challenge. So, if that's you, then that's fantastic. But like I mentioned, there's several stages of this beginning Greek stage, of this intermediate Greek stage rather. Now, you might be going, well, wait a minute, where do I fall if I learnt Greek back in the day and I just haven't kept it up? Or what about if, I've learnt Greek and I've been using it for sermon preparation, but I haven't really taken it much beyond that? Or what about if I learnt Greek and now I've become dependent on tools? And those are all really good questions. And at this early stage, right, it's very likely that one of those things may well describe you. I know if for instance, with my Hebrew, I'm not as confident with my Hebrew as I am with my Greek. And I know that, there's probably there's not enough knowledge of vocabulary there for me, which means that I struggle a little bit with some harder texts in Hebrew. Now, if that's like you, if you're like me with my Hebrew, if that's with you with your Greek, then let me know in the section there that you are rusty, okay? Let me know that. I'd love to just sort of see if you're one of those people who are a little bit rusty in your Greek. Now, we all can get this way very easily. So, and this is something just as a warning, I guess, if you've just finished beginning Greek, if you don't keep moving forward, this will become you as well. So let's talk about that. How do we deal with that? And this is really one of the reasons I've been really excited about doing this live stream with you today is really to just to sort of talk with you about a little pack that I put together for those of you who are rusty. And if you're interested in that, again, leave a comment in the chat there and let me know if you're in that rusty category or not. Because to move forward from rusty, the key thing is, and this is true of early beginning Greek, if you've just finished the beginning Greek process and you're in that very early stage, the key issue here is confidence, right? It doesn't matter, again, rusty or beginning intermediate, you're going to be, it's that confidence that's really the kicker right now. So what to do here? What to do? Well, you really want to build up that confidence, okay? Now, the way to do that, let me just have a look here. Really, again, just like with beginning Greek, there was those 4 tasks that I mentioned in last week's video, and those 4 tasks were, of course, vocabulary, paradigms, knowing the morphology, the parsing, that is putting those 2 things together. So you're putting your vocabulary and your morphology knowledge together so that you're reliably passing words and then translating words. Those are the 4 key tasks at this intermediate stage, regardless of whether you're rusty or early in that intermediate phase, okay? So if you're rusty, you've been maybe just using Greek for sermon prep and you've become dependent on tools, or maybe you learned Greek a long time ago. If that's the case with you, then I've put together a little pack. Let me just put it on the screen here. You can download this totally free if you go to Master New Testament Greek, masternTgreek.com/refresh. Okay, masternTgreek.com/refresh. You can download or you can get access to my refresher pack, which is designed to help guide you through rebuilding your knowledge of the Greek New Testament. Now, again, it goes through those 4 tasks, and what I do is I'm going to give you, as part of that pack, I'm going to give you all the vocabulary that occurs 50 times or more in the Greek New Testament, along with instructions about how to set all of that up. I'm also going to give you my paradigm review worksheet. Now, this is just a worksheet with a whole bunch of blank paradigms. And again, you can use these just to write them out and really become familiar with them. And then, of course, I'm going to encourage you to use one of the passing apps, and I'll give you a link to the video that I have, which you can find on YouTube with my recommendation for all the best passing apps that are out there. And then I'm also going to give you a graded translation sheet. And this is actually pretty cool, I reckon. One of the things that we struggle with Greek sometimes, if you're in that lacking confidence stage, is, well, how good am I really with my translation? So what I've done is I've put together a set of 30 exercises, Greek texts, that you can just go through and translate. Now, when you do this, what I encourage you to do is actually go through each one of them and translate it without depending on tools. Don't go look up any of the passing or the declensions or anything like that. Just work through each one of them. They're in sections of about 5 or 6 per section. I've broken them up so you're doing nouns, indicative verbs, participles, and then pretty much everything else. And then I've given you a set of translation exercises after that, which are not drawn from the New Testament, that will really test you to see, how good your translation really are, assuming you get through the other moods section. So go through and do that to start with. And so when you go through this, learn, just when you're refreshing, what I encourage you to do is to go back over these in those kinds of sections. Go through your nouns first, refresh your knowledge of the morphology while you're learning the vocabulary. So start with the vocabulary, but then work on your noun knowledge, okay? Build that out again, and then add the indicative verbs in, build that out until you know how contract verbs work, how the different roots work in the different verb forms and so on. Then go through participles, which most people find a bit more difficult. And of course that works because you've got the verbal idea plus the noun idea and you're shoving them together really for the, for participles. And then you're going to learn the other moods, the subjunctive, infinitives, and imperatives and so on. And so what this worksheet will do is it will work through you and give you basically 5 or 6 different translation exercises for each of those sections. So go through and just translate them without looking anything up. And the further you get down that, it should tell you pretty much where you're at and what you're struggling with. So if you're struggling with paradigms, then you'll probably get through the indicative verb section. Maybe you'll muddle here and there, but you'll get through that without too much difficulty, and then you'll get into participles and you'll go, wait a second, how is this working? And then you'll get into the infinitives and you'll struggle with those. But this will give you an idea of actually what you need to go back to and what you need to work on most thoroughly. Okay, and that's what I would do, is I just go back then, say if it's paradigm, if it's participles, say, I would go back there and I would just sort of say, well, how do I, let me go back and reread the textbook on the grammar, for instance, on participles, get your head around that again. Maybe it's subjunctives. Subjunctives are actually pretty easy because you've got the an particle, which goes with either, ean or one of the other particles that it often is joined with. You've often got other clues in the text, a hint clause or something like that. So subjunctives normally are pretty easy, and even a hortatory subjunctive normally is quite straightforward as well. So, that page, masterntgreek.com/refresh. I see a few of you there saying, does that work? That's a great question. Let me just try that here. If the shortcode doesn't work, which it does. Yeah, there we go. It works. Okay, cool. So hopefully that works. And if it doesn't, email me and we'll get it to you anyway. But hopefully that works, and hopefully you'll be able to get your refresh pack. So masterntgreek.com/refresh to download that, totally free, and that will just give you, and I think the most excited thing I'm most excited about in that really is, well, putting it all together I think has been good, and also that graded translation sheet at the bottom as well. So go download that and get it there. And if you don't get it, if something goes wrong, shoot an email to support@masterntgreek.com and we will help you out. So hopefully, if you're at that rusty stage, hopefully the refresh pack will give you the tools you need to be able to evaluate where you're at and then rebuild so that you can then start to move forward. Okay, so masterntgreek.com/refresh. Now, what about if you're a little bit further on? How do you know what kind of stage you're at if you've gone a little beyond that? Let's say you're pretty good and you're reading pretty confidently. And here's the thing. I got an email just the other day. Someone said to me that they were trying to work out where they were on their journey in terms of am I advanced? Am I intermediate? And let me just give you a clue here. If you have to ask if you're advanced, you're probably not, okay? The thing is, here's what I would say. If you're advanced, you're able to read the New Testament pretty quickly. In fact, I would say if you're at that advanced Greek stage, you should be able to read the Greek New Testament twice per year thoroughly in your devotional times. Okay, so if you think about it, that would mean then that you sit down for, I don't know, half an hour, whatever it is you normally use for your devotional time, and the more the better in my opinion, right? But you've got a reading plan where you're reading through the New Testament. Now, if you're thinking about reading through the whole Bible in a year, typically you're going to read through you're going to be doing 4 chapters a day if you're reading through the whole Bible in a year. Now, if you're reading through 1 chapter a day, that means you're probably going to get through a good chunk of the New Testament. And here's the thing, right? If you're reading a chapter of the day of the New Testament, then you're probably going to get through the New Testament in 6 months. But the problem is that the New Testament is different lengths of chapters. Some chapters are quite long, some chapters are quite short. But if you're working through it about a chapter a day, you should be able to get through the New Testament. It'll be over 6 months, but it's at a pretty decent sort of pace. To get through the New Testament in 6 months, you're going to have to read more than a chapter a day on average, but it should be quite doable for you if you're at that advanced stage. So that would be my sort of status on that. However, I would add to that too, that as you're looking at the text, if you're an advanced student, you're able to identify clause structures, you're able to identify the relationship between the clause structures, you're starting to look at discourse markers, how the author is structured, the overall narrative. Of course, you're following the argument pretty comprehensively, and you're able to see the boundaries of where he moves from subject to subject, because you can see the way he's changing subject and things like that. And also, I would say too that within the sentence structure, there's still possibly going to be some times where you have to go back and take another look, but you're able to work it out pretty quickly, and you don't have to revert to commentaries or grammars or anything like that as a rule for your reading. Okay, so if you're someone who's advanced, then that's the stage that you're at. You're able to read through the New Testament twice a year in your devotional time, and you're able to do that with a high degree of knowledge of the grammar, clause structures, and so on and so forth. So if you're not at that stage, then that means that you're probably somewhere in that intermediate stage, either early or maybe a little further on in it. And let me just take a moment here. If you've got a question that you want me to answer about where you're up to on this, leave it just put a comment in the chat there and let me know, and I'll do what I can to answer those in just a moment. Just going through the chats, man, you guys are busy on the chat. Thank you. So good to have all of you here. Hello to those of you from, we got Henry from Indiana, Nancy, Dwayne, good to have you with us. We've got some Master New Testament Greek members there, Michelle, Mark, many others. Wow, Shayla, thank you. Good to see you all. A lot of beginners here. That's awesome. It's great to have you if you're a beginner. Welcome. It's good to have you with us. Roderick, David. Wow, man, you're all here. This is fantastic. Clint Archer, thank you. Welcome. So Clint's one of those guys. He's actually been, Clint Archer is, thank you, Clint, for joining us today. So Clint's been working on a series of blog posts on the cripplegate.com. If you go there and have a look, I think he posted one yesterday about his journey to reclaim his Greek. So that's probably worth a read as well. What do we got here? We've got Daniel Morris. Welcome, Daniel. Justin, good to see you. Nathan Pena, good to have you with us. Nicholas Allsop. Man, we've got some... Look at you all. This is great. A lot of beginners, a lot of intermediate people. A few people rusty. Nicholas says he's rusty. Elliot feels rusty, I guess, right? I know some of you have been going through into beginning Greek, and some of you are even into intermediate Greek. Let me just make a note about that, because the level of confidence you have is not necessarily the best indicator of where you're at. If you've finished beginning Greek, and like I said, you've got your 50 words, the words that occur 50 times or more down, and you're pretty good with your paradigms and word recognition and your parsing, then I would say you're in that intermediate stage, even if you don't feel very confident. And if that's the case, then what you should do is just to keep moving forward. The most important thing at that intermediate stage is to keep reading. That's the most important thing. The one thing you want to do if you're at that intermediate stage and you want to keep making steady progress forward, then what you want to do is build the vocabulary and keep reading. And this is one of the things that I found when I started, and Clint Archer and I went to the same seminary. One of the things I found, I went through seminary, I learned all the vocabulary, the basic vocabulary, and I learned a whole bunch of, how to pass and, exegetical stuff and all that sort of jazz. It was really good. The thing that I really needed to do, really wanted to do, was to actually be able to read the New Testament, and I needed to know the words for that. I needed to know the vocabulary. So that's where I came from when I developed the Master New Testament Greek system, which is really read book by book through the Greek New Testament. Let me make a note about that. If you're in that intermediate Greek stage and you're working through your vocabulary and you're doing it by occurrence, you're going to find it really hard. The reason is that every time you go down one notch in your occurrence, maybe from, say, 15 occurrences to 14 occurrences, from 14 to 13, you're actually increasing the number of words every time that you need to learn to be able to get to that next stage. And eventually get to this point where to go from, say, 2 occurrences to 0 occurrences, so you get through the hapax, you've got to learn nearly 2,000 words. So this gets harder and harder and harder as you go, which is why reading book by book through the Greek New Testament is by far the best way to go. And so the vocabulary that we use in Master New Testament Greek, and you can find that, you can get, the refresh will give you a link to that, but go to masterntgreek.com/students and you can find more information there about the student edition. But that vocab pack really allows you to learn the vocabulary book by book, starting with the easiest books and moving all the way through to the end. Okay, so you go through the easy books, then you go into Paul's writing, 2 Thessalonians, and then you go through into the Gospels and Hebrews and Acts right at the very end. And it takes into account both the lexical and the syntactical difficulty, okay? But you want to learn the words book by book, because then that gives you the satisfaction of being able to read a whole book of the Greek New Testament together all at one time. You can read the whole book and you've got a degree of fluency in that book, and then the idea is that you reread that book and reread that book until your speed really increases and your confidence goes up with it, okay? So that's what I encourage you to do. Don't use the occurrence-based system. It's just going to get harder and harder, and eventually you'll give up. Use the book-by-book approach, which is going to be far more satisfying. And again, this then also gives you a clue as to how far through that intermediate stage you really are. Because a key element of that intermediate stage is how much vocabulary have you got? How much do you recognize? And to be sure, there's going to be some words that you're not going to even need to learn. Certainly place names, proper names, things like that. You can almost sort of work those out without even having to learn the vocabulary for them. But there may be a few other words as well. Compound words sometimes come pretty easily, but you have to be careful with compound words, because when you get a preposition on a verb, there are 3 different ways that combination can work. Sometimes it's the combination of the preposition and the verb, and you can work it out. Other times, that actually takes on its own kind of meaning, and over time develops a completely different meaning entirely. And sometimes, of course, putting the preposition on the front of the word just intensifies the main verbal idea. So there's different ways that the preposition on the front of that verb will work. So compound words can be a bit tricky, so you don't want to assume that just because it's a compound word with a preposition on the front that you're going to be able to, just recognize and instantly work out what the word means. Yes, a lot of the time you will, but a lot of the time you won't as well. So let me go back here and just have a look at the comments here about questions going through here. Hey, Duncan from Kenya, good to see you. Ted Lee, great to see you with us as well. Terry Wurst, good to have you with us. Michael Griffiths from London, thanks for joining. Right, Daniel Morris asks, I'm using the Master New Testament Greek vocab learning pack on my own up to 2 Peter. Wow, good work. Man, that's awesome. 2 Peter's a tough book, doesn't it? But the thing is, the reason I put it earlier there in the series is that it's a short book and the vocabulary is not that overwhelming. And if you learn the vocabulary for 2 Peter, then it's going to set you up well for the books that follow it, particularly Jude. I think Jude comes afterwards. And also having a book that's a little bit more challenging like that is a really good preparation for books like Hebrews and Acts and the Gospel of Luke at times and so on. So the question there, to tackle the more complex grammar, do you suggest intermediate grammars, read the Septuagint, or something else? What do you think? Okay, good. This is a great question. Let me just start by suggesting that if you're going to get an intermediate Greek grammar, this is the one that I recommend. You can get this on Logos Bible Software, I think it's got an mntg.me/Matthewson with 1T. You can get a copy of this on Logos. This is a great grammar. It's pretty short and it's very readable. And the reason I really like this grammar is that it's very organic, whereas if you get something like Mounce's Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics, it's very much about categories and exegesis. This is much more focused on how the language is actually working, which means that as a reader, you're actually going to benefit from it a lot more. So this is a great grammar if you're looking at reading and you want something a little bit more advanced. And so in that sense, then yes, I would encourage you to actually, what am I trying to do here? Part of me here is trying to see if I can overlay. Let me see here. See if I can overlay a comment. No, that's not what I'm trying to do here. I have to learn how to do this, I guess, don't I? Add to broadcast. There it is. This is the question I'm answering. Look at that. That was so much easier. Okay, yeah. So I would start, first of all, you want to get a grammar like this that's going to help you out. Read through it. Don't worry too much about internalizing all the details of it. But I would focus particularly on reading and then rereading, okay? Vocabulary, obviously, that prepares you to read the book, reread the book, and then as you go, I would also encourage you to go back to other books you've already read. Those will help you also to go back over what you read a while ago that you may have forgotten. And again, the more you're interacting with the text, the more you're seeing the way the language actually lays itself out, the easier it's going to be. Now, if you wanted to, you can go into the Septuagint and the Apostolic Fathers. In fact, we do this every single week inside the Master New Testament Greek community membership. Every week we have a live call and we go through some Greek text somewhere. We alternate between the New Testament and the Septuagint and the Apostolic Fathers. So this month we're doing the New Testament and we're working through Romans chapter 1. Last month we were going through the Septuagint and it was 2 Samuel chapter 1. Next month we're going to be in the Apostolic Fathers somewhere, and I can't remember what I plan to go through there. And then the month after that we'll be back into the New Testament. So I would encourage you to sort of mix it up if you can. If you've got enough time, it would be fantastic, I think, to be able to read through the text you're working on right now, reread previous texts, and then just dip your feet maybe once a week into some non-biblical or at least non-New Testament text that you can start to sort of challenge yourself with. So that would be my encouragement to you in terms of moving that forward. I hope that's helpful. If it is, hit the like button. That's going to be really helpful. Other questions we got here. The link. So Darcy says if the link doesn't work, your browser is probably blocking pop-ups. Yeah, that could be the case. It shouldn't be. We'll try and adjust that so that normally what we do is we do have a pop-up on the page. So you click the link and it does provide you with that pop-up. So maybe we'll look at changing that to an embedded link or something like that. Yeah, so here we go. So Mark says that he's reading the New Testament each year with my own plan, 22 verses a day. So yeah, that should get you through the New Testament in a year. That's pretty good. That's a really good intermediate stage to be at. Is that with or without a reader's edition? That would be my question. You want to be able to do that without a reader's edition, and then you want to speed that up, okay? Eventually, anyway. I mean, don't rush. Don't feel bad about where you're at. We're all at different stages, right? But this is fantastic, and I just encourage you, keep up the great work. So thank you, Mark. Question, David. All right. Not that one. That's the question I'm looking for here. Okay. I've heard a number of people on that said going from John's writing to Paul's writings is very hard. How can that transition be made smoother? Yeah, this is hard. So here's the thing. In Master New Testament Greek, I order the words that you learn in book by book from the easiest books to the hardest, taking into account the lexical and the syntactical difficulty. Now, there's some fudge in this, okay? Because what is often easier lexically, as in there's not as many words to learn, is sometimes a little bit more difficult syntactically. Paul's writings are reasonably consistent. He's a consistent writer, but you do get a little bit of variation here and there when he has an amanuensis, someone who's writing the text for him. They will add their own little flourishes here and there and things like that just will modify the style just a little bit. But he's pretty consistent overall. So with something like this, I don't know that it's super easy to do that. All I can say at this stage is that John's writings are particularly easy. And here's where the Reading Greek course that we do inside the Mastery membership is really helpful, because it drives you to that stage where you're able to work through that a lot easier. And so I would encourage you, if you're inside Master New Testament Greek, to join the Reading Greek course after you finish Beginning Greek. Whenever we finish a Beginning Greek course, we take a 1 week break, then we go on and we just do a Reading Greek course straight away. So it should be just move straight on with it, and that will get you into Paul's writings without too much difficulty. That's the best way of doing it, but how do you make that smoother? It's not easy to do. Maybe there's opportunity to put in some extra exercises here and there. But one other thing I would say here, if you're in the Mastery membership or the community membership as well, is to join those weekly text reading calls where we're reading other texts. Because even if you're not reading with us, at least you're starting to see the texts and see how different authors put things, and you're getting used to other ways of writing things. Because John writes things in a way that is just so easy to work with. And so I would encourage you to join those text reading calls if you're a Mastery member or a community member as well. So that would be my encouragement. I hope that helps, David. There's no way to make Paul's writings easier, but there are ways of sort of familiarizing yourself with different kinds of writings before you get there. Okay, another one here. Rob asks, if I'm not able to make your community group phone calls, is the group still beneficial for me? Yeah, I would say so. So there's a number of things you get in the community membership. We do have Zoom calls every week. We have an office hours call, 2 text reading calls where we go through those different Greek texts, which are really ideal if you're refreshing your Greek, or if you're in that intermediate Greek stage and you're wanting to develop your knowledge of the language. So that would be, those are helpful. I record all of those and you can watch the replays later. So if you do join, you can always watch the replays, and if something happens, maybe once a month you're able to join us, great, do that. The other thing too is we also have the Reading Academy where we read through texts. We've read through a whole bunch of different things. This last month we were reading through a good chunk of the Greek Verb Revisited, which is a bit of a tome. This month we are reading through, what are we reading this month? The New Testament Documents, Are They Reliable? By F.F. Bruce. So we alternate between something. So yeah, there's lots of reasons to join the community. And then of course there's all the people who are going to be encouraging you onwards, many of whom are in the chat here right now on this live stream. So that would be my encouragement to you. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of value there. If you can't make the live calls, you can still watch the replays and you can still join in with lots of other elements that are going on inside the membership as well. But it's up to you, right? No pressure from me. But I hope that's helpful, Rob. What are the strengths and weaknesses of learning discourse grammar, such as Rungi for reading and exegesis? Yeah, Charles, thank you for this question. I think really here, discourse grammar is something that I'm still working my way through. One of the challenges that I've found is that there are several different schools of linguistic thought in the Greek New Testament world, and there's not necessarily a lot of cohesion between them. If you go read something like Advances in the Study of Greek by Constantine Campbell, or perhaps the volume that was released earlier this year by David Allen Black about linguistics in the Greek New Testament, you'll find that there's not necessarily a high degree of agreement, and this is what's really held me back from pushing discourse grammar a lot more. I would like to see us learn discourse grammar, and there's Todd Scacewater has just released a discourse grammar book, so I'm interested in reading that and seeing what he has to say there as well. I think it's an edited volume, so there's going to be some good stuff in there, I'm sure. And Stephen Rungi's grammar, I really do like it. If I was going to do a discourse grammar course, which I've been toying with for a little while now, that's probably where I would go at this stage. But again, the thing that holds me back is that there are different schools of thought on this, and there's not as much agreement between them as I would like to see. So I would say dip into it, look at the arguments, benefit from them, but just realize that I think this is an area that in New Testament Greek specifically, we are still early in, and there's a lot of work left to be done here yet. So I hope that's helpful, Charles. That's a great question. As a beginner, here we go. Thank you, Brian, for this question. As a beginner, should I work through a grammar first and then do the book-by-book vocabulary, or both at the same time? Great question. So here's what I typically recommend. Go through the grammar first. Focus on beginning Greek to start with, and we use Dr. Merkel and Plummer's Beginning with New Testament Greek. This is a really accessible Greek grammar. It's very smooth. It's not very lumpy in the details of each chapter. So I really like this, and I recommend this now, and we use it inside Master New Testament Greek. He only gives you about 15 words a week to learn. So when I get to about chapter 12, I start to double them up. So you're doing 30 words a week, and then when you run out of words in there, then I give you, this is inside the Mastery membership, and then what I do is I then give you the words for 1 John and 2 John, so that by the time you've finished with Beginning with New Testament Greek, you know all the words in 1 John and 2 John, and probably even 3 John as well, and you're able to start just and get straight into those. And that dovetails nicely into the Reading Greek course, where we go through 2 Thessalonians and so on as well. So I recommend that you focus on the beginning Greek first. There's plenty to deal with there. And then once you're getting through that, then start to add in the book-by-book vocabulary that you can then start to use as you get more advanced in your beginning Greek. So that's my recommendation. If that's helpful, again, hit the like button. I really appreciate your support here as well. Okay, what else have we got in terms of questions? It's good to have you with us, Terry. Thank you, Terry, for your support. It's so good having you with us. And I know that not everybody can make those calls, but I really appreciate those who do. It makes the calls so much easier when there's people on them to talk to, I got to say. Okay, what else have we got here? Other questions. Thank you, Michael, for your support as well. I really appreciate it. A question for Hebrew, Daniel Morris. I know I don't focus on Hebrew. Yeah, this is one of the things. There's a lot of people inside the Master New Testament Greek membership who keep saying to me, we need Master Old Testament Hebrew. Working on it. Would love to do that at some point. If you're keen to see a Master Old Testament Hebrew, hit the like button and let us know, and I'd love to hear from you as well, or leave a comment in the chat there as well. So let me go back here. Daniel Morris. Okay, what suggestions after finishing the beginning stage? Yeah, so in terms of vocabulary, what was the vocabulary I used here? I think I used Landy's. If you go into Logos, Landy's vocabulary, I can't remember the name of the book, but he has a vocabulary approach that is by root. Now, I use that. So the nice thing about that is you learn the Hebrew root word, the basic cowl form of that, and then you add in all the different variations of it, the adjectival forms, the noun forms, and so on. And that's really helpful in terms of going, it's not book by book, it's not quite occurrence either, but it does get you a long way in a very short amount of time. So that's a good approach for Hebrew vocabulary. But yeah, you're right. There is no book-by-book graded vocab list, and when I've looked at this, it kind of gets quite daunting. So I'm kind of keen to work on it, but it's not. I don't have the time to do that right now. So that's my thoughts on that. But Hebrew is well worth it. Once you've got the vocabulary, I would go through and read the easy text. Particularly the Pentateuch is pretty straightforward. Particularly the history-oriented Pentateuch, like Genesis, Exodus, very straightforward. It gets harder, obviously, when you get into some of the setup for the tabernacle and things like that. The easiest Hebrew in the entire Old Testament is basically from about Genesis 28 through to 50. That's the easiest Hebrew, followed by Haggai, Jonah. Those are very easy books to read. Good places to go to once you've finished beginning Hebrew. But you want to get into some of the Psalms. You want to get into some of the history books. And I've read through a good number of the history books, and I need to get back into doing that as well. But yeah, that would be my recommendation. Go through Landes, Landes, that's the surname, and look for vocabulary. It's available on Logos, and you can download those as well. In fact, if you're interested in my Hebrew vocab, you can email me at support@masterntgreek.com, and I will send you the vocab that I use, which is Landes, and it works with Flashcards Deluxe. If you're interested in doing that, I'm probably going to get a bunch of emails now, and I'm probably going to regret that later on. But nonetheless, support@masterntgreek.com, and I will send you the Landes vocab that I use as well. Okay. Question, who was that by? Matthew Percy. Okay, I believe you're probably not talking about this, right? You're talking about this. This is Merkel and Plummer. This one is David Mathewson and Elodie Ballantyne Emig. Okay, Mathewson and Emig is how I normally refer to this. So Mathewson with a single T, not two T's, one T. Mathewson. David Mathewson has done a whole bunch of work, a number of grammars and commentaries and things like that. Well, not number of grammars, but he's got this grammar, and I think there's a beginning Greek grammar as well, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Okay, what about access for people in the UK? I assume, Matthew, again, this is a question about the Mastery membership. Yeah, so the questions, when we provide the calls and everything and the times, in the community membership provides them in your native time zone, and in the Mastery membership for the course calls, which aren't published in the community, those times are all on the Mastery dashboard, and what I do there is I give you access. I give you 5 different time zones, including GMT, so you can work out what time it's in for you as well. And of course, I still record all of those as well. So if you can't make the actual time, you can still watch the replay afterwards. Yes, there we go. Matthew, Michelle, thank you, Michelle. It's actually, one of the things about the whole Mastery membership is it is step by step, right? It's designed to take you and provide the next step wherever you're at. And that's kind of nice because you get into that intermediate stage and you're like, okay, I've got some fluency now, I've got some confidence, I'm just going to go jump into something like, say, Luke. I can't tell you how many times I get people will buy the student edition of Master New Testament Greek, and they'll say, we're just about to study, Luke or Matthew or whatever it happens to be in our course. Can I rearrange the vocabulary so I learn that book first? And the answer is often that's not a good idea. The reason is that if you go from learning, say, 1 John, and then you go to something like Luke, not only is the syntax significantly more difficult than John's syntax, but the vocabulary Luke uses is crazy. If you've got 50 words or more in your vocabulary and you go to Luke, you've got over 1,000 words you're going to have to learn to be able to read the whole of the book of Luke. Now, if you go to 1 John, you've got 90 words to be able to learn to read all of 1 John. So putting it in order allows it to reduce the number of words you have to learn while you get this big bang for buck in terms of now you're able to read books. And on average, the way I've set it up is you can read a new book of the New Testament in Greek every 2 months if you learn 25 to 30 words a week. So it is really set up, Michelle's right here, it's really designed so that you just work step by step and it tells you exactly what to do next so that you don't get lost and confused along the way. Dina, I'd love to see Master Old Testament Hebrew. Oh my goodness, here we go. Yep, there's a whole bunch of people who would love to see that. Well, thank you for your support. We'll work on it. We'll see what happens. This is one of those things Yes. Okay. Question. Okay. Thank you, Clint. I am rememorizing paradigms after losing them. What order would you recommend? Yeah, I recommend start with nouns, then go to indicative verbs because that's quite a lot to learn. Then work through to paradigms. There's not much to learn for paradigms. It's pretty straightforward, and then go on to the non-indicatives such as your subjunctives and infinitives and imperatives. But for the most part, you'll find that when you get through indicatives and participles, you'll find that you'll have a good chunk of it down, and infinitives are pretty straightforward, so you'll be able to, you'll know what to look for. Psi and ain endings are pretty easy to sort of note. So I would go in that order, work on nouns first, then indicative verbs, then go into participles, and then basically everything else. And for what it's worth, that's pretty much the order most Greek grammars arrange everything in anyway, which means that you can work with pretty much any Greek grammar and sort of work through those in that chapter. Now, some, like beginning with New Testament Greek, will put certain pronouns later on, the third declensions after most of the indicative verbs, but for the most part, that's a consistent thing, a consistent pattern you see between beginning Greek grammars. So, what else have we got here in terms of questions? Here's another one. What do we got here? Robert Edwards would also love to see Old Testament Hebrew as well as a joint path to mastery where one could learn Hebrew and Greek concurrently. Wow, you're a sucker for punishment. For what it's worth, I did that. I did Greek first, then I added Hebrew in, and it's hard work. What you find is that Greek has got easier vocabulary, even though there's in some ways more roots in Greek than there is in Hebrew. Hebrew's got easier syntax, generally speaking. But nonetheless, I found that working with two languages at once was really difficult. Some people, I guess, can do that, but you'd have to be one of those key kind of language people to be able to do that, I think. And I'm not one of those language people. Yeah, but let's see what we can do. Let's work on the Hebrew thing first, and we'll see what happens. Okay, Hayden, do you do this same process with the Septuagint as in a book-by-book approach? Not yet, but I am really strongly thinking about it. When I first talked about Master New Testament Greek with Dr. Rob Plummer, who, by the way, obviously the author of this grammar, has been a real blessing to me as I've been going down this track. One of his suggestions was when you finish the New Testament, then go on to the Septuagint. And it's actually not awfully difficult to do. What I find is once you know all of the vocabulary in the New Testament, the vocabulary of the Septuagint, there's very few words you actually don't know. And the same goes for the Apostolic Fathers as well. There are some, but you know most of the words already, which makes it super easy to go from the New Testament to the Septuagint. So yeah, I think definitely that's something that I will look at doing in the future as well. Okay, cool. Any other questions here? Man, look at you all. Tim, thank you, Tim, for that. Yeah, that's the book. So George M. Landy's Building Your Biblical Hebrew Vocabulary. That's the book that I use for my vocabulary as well. Okay, cool. One more here, Judith. MSG, Nathan, yeah. Master Septuagint Greek. Yeah, that will give MSG. That's anyway. Cool. A number of other people interested in Old Testament Hebrew as well. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful. Let me just go back and just sort of recap a little bit what we've talked about here. We've talked about the different stages, beginning Greek, how long it's going to take. We've talked about intermediate Greek, the different stages of intermediate Greek, and what it looks like to be an advanced Greek. So again, let me know in the chat which one of those you are, if you haven't already done so, or in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you there. And also, the key things to do to move your Greek forward is really, first of all, you want to understand where you're at. And if you're refreshing your Greek, maybe you've lost some of that, go and download my refreshing pack, which you'll find at masterntgreek.com/refresh, and make sure your pop-up blockers are turned off for that. And inside there, I will give you a bit of a guide to how to do that, including how to set up Flashcards Deluxe and use the vocabulary, including setting up Master Greek deck, accommodation deck, and then all of the vocabulary occurring 50 times or more. Also give you my paradigms chart and a graded translation sheet, so you can work your way through to see just where you're at in terms of your Greek as well, in terms of how your translation is. And again, when you do that graded translation sheet, don't use any tools. The goal is to work out where you're strong and where you're weak, and then make note of that, and then you can go and beef those areas up. Okay, so masterntgreek.com/refresh. Now, if you've been on this call with me today, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a joy. I've loved interacting with you in the comments there, so thank you. And if you're interested in learning more about Master New Testament Greek, or if you're interested in what is it going to take, then go and download my roadmap at masterntgreek.com/roadmap. And if you've found this helpful, of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notify bell, and of course, let us know that you've found this useful by hitting that like button as well. Thank you again so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to serving you more in the future. And until the next video, well, keep taking small, consistent steps. We'll see you then.